Kritika Sixeria. Welcome to 21st Century TV episode of State of Affairs. I'm very excited to have the author of 101 Ways to Improve Australia, Mr. Jamie Mcintyre, with me. Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Hi, it's good to be here.
So, Jamie, I've been reading up about your 21st century political system, and I'd like to ask you, how did the idea of a new modern-day 21st century political system come about in the first place?
Yeah, it came about a couple of years ago. Obviously, as an entrepreneur and educator, I focus on solutions to helping people's individual problems, and obviously I'm a very passionate Australian, so I've always been looking at what are the roadblocks or what are the things that hold this country back. And I guess in particular in the last few years, and we're seeing, I guess some people say, the political circus that's going on in our country, where we have a government that, you know, the current Prime Minister was never elected by the people. Our elected Prime Minister Kevin Rudd was basically, booted out by union factions. These faceless men that basically are dictating to Australians who should be Prime Minister when we're meant to be a democracy. So I was really frustrated, like many Australians, that are disempowered by our current political system. Let's face it, it's designed in the 19th century. We're now in the 21st century. And just like what I've highlighted with the education system in Australia for 15 years now, I've been about updating and modernising our education system. We live in the 21st century, not the 19th century, so we should have a 21st century education system. The same with our political system. The idea came about that we really need a new modern day political system in this country.
Fair enough. And in this current political climate, why do you think there is a pressing need for the 21st century political system? Exactly, specifically.
Well, I think now there's more need than ever because you have a high level of disillusionment. We have people in this country that, for instance, we have compulsory voting. People, that's a mission of failure, I would say. If we have a political system that requires people to be forced to vote, and the frustrations many voters have out there in this country is that they're forced to vote generally for two people or two parties they may not like. If you're going to force people to vote, give them a choice at least of saying, I don't want to necessarily vote for either party or either leader, because a lot of people may be not happy with either choice. So I think now more than ever, when we've seen the political circus of the last few years, where we have a current Prime Minister who was not elected by the people, but was put in power by faceless men that meet in Chinese restaurants in this country, dictating in a so-called democracy who our leader is. That's not democracy. So right now, we need to transform this country, and people will be more empowered if there's a political system that it gives them the true power. Democracy was designed for the power to be in the hands of the people. So the idea of a new system is, let's put the power back in the hands of the voters, not in the hands of these faceless men in union factions that meet in Chinese restaurants that are dictating to the rest of us who our leaders should be.
Fair enough. So do you think eliminating compulsory voting will actually achieve these goals to some extent?
Part of my idea and concept of what I've been pushing with the 21st century political system is one of those things is to eliminate compulsory voting. It's an admission of failure. Sure, we want people to vote and we should encourage them to vote, but my point is, if you change the political system and update it to a modern one that I'm suggesting, people will want to vote.
Exactly.
That's what's different. So it's voting by choice. That's true democracy. Forcing people to vote is anti-democratic, it's communistic, it's socialistic. There's no place for that in a modern day political system.
And the States doesn't have compulsory voting either. So
well, it has come out with Premier Newman even highlighting that technically it's not legal to force people to vote. So now I know there's some people who say, well, we don't, minority interests will gain power, we're not forced to vote. I disagree with that. The idea of me suggesting a new political system that we don't have compulsory voting is to stop minorities, like right now in this country, the minorities are running the show, to stop them and be able to abuse the power.
Absolutely. Now, what are the critical aspects of a 21st century political system besides just compulsory voting?
There's quite a few. I'll tell you, the biggest thing that would be is that voters, this is a challenge. Let's say in the last election, most of Australians were against the introduction of a carbon tax, as an example. And our current Prime Minister said very clearly to the Australian public, if you vote for me, we will not have a carbon tax. Obviously, when she was elected, she effectively lied and changed that and then introduced the carbon tax. I think that really annoys people because then they run ads spending taxpayers' money saying, say yes to a carbon tax. there was no opportunity now to say yes or no to a carbon tax. It's false advertising, and it really annoys people. Whether you're for a carbon tax or not, it's not the issue. The point is, we as Australian voters deserve the right to vote direct on policy. If you just vote for a party, you may like some of their policies, but not all of them. But if they're elected to power, they take a mandate or assume they have a mandate to introduce all the policy. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was very much against the Howard government supporting the war in Iraq, like many people. I was very much against that. But as far as Howard's economic policies, I was okay with those. So, you know, how do you then vote? You go, well, I'm very passionate about the issues with Iraq. I don't think we should be invading that country based on the lies that we're told. But then I want to support the economic policies. We should have been able to vote based on policy and say, do you support the policy to invade Iraq based on these pre-assumptions? Most Australians, I'm sure, would have said yes, would have said no, but at least would have had that choice. Do you support the economic policies and list them? For instance, in the last election, if we said, do you support a carbon tax, yes or no? Do you support a mining tax, yes or no? Do you support spending $42 billion on an NBN, or would you prefer a one that's more cost effective? Let voters vote on major policy. That's one of the key elements of what I'm proposing with a new 21st century political system.
Exactly. So you're trying to say that political parties should not have precedence over policy.
What we want is policy. The other issue that this would change is that why do we have political parties in the first place? They're not always, you know, just towing the party line is what causes great potential politicians to be incongruent. Like, if you believe in a policy, as a politician, you should be able to push that policy, and you should be voted to power on the basis of the quality of your policies. So what we want, what Australians like, Australians actually like discussing policy. What they don't like is politics. Do you understand? So I'm suggesting a political system that's based on policy, not political bickering. So by eliminating this, by having a voting on policy, politicians would be elected based on their quality of policy, and they would not have to toe the party line because they could vote back and forth based on policy. Now, the major policies the voters get to vote on, what's not considered major policy, the politicians elected would vote on those, would be trusted to do that. But you get elected as a politician based on how many people would vote for you based on your policies. You list what your policies are, what you support. Then when you're elected, it's a clear black and white list to see, did you vote in power on these policies you said you would, or did you not? And, you know, so that would help a lot.
Well, that would be revolutionary. I guess it is time for a break, and we'll be back after a short break. Thank you. I'm back after our break. Welcome to State of Affairs, 21st Century TV, and I'm here with author of 101 Ways to Improve Australia, Mr. Jamie Mcintyre. Great to have you back, Jamie. As we were talking about the 21st century political system, it sounds interesting, revolutionary, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are going to agree with your perspectives. So in light of that, would you like to elaborate on a few more critical aspects of a 21st century political system?
Yeah, absolutely. When we talked about compulsory voting being eliminated, we talked about the biggest issue that voters should be able to vote direct on major policy. Just that alone would be a major change, and people feel more empowered and want to vote. The other areas that I look at is the power of the removal of the power of government spending should not be left to the hands of politicians. Many of these politicians, for instance, are not financially skilled to manage their own financial affairs in most cases. They've never been entrepreneurial, many have never succeeded in the real world. Besides that, they're certainly not skilled to be able to look after $360 billion a year, which is the tax revenue of this country. So what I'm suggesting, just like the interest rates are set independently of the Treasury and independently of the politicians by an independent Reserve Bank board, I'm suggesting government spending should be removed from the hands of the politicians, from the hands of the government, and put into the hands of an independent board where the brightest brains for financial and business management in the country, in the world for that matter, are hired to sit on this independent board and committee to oversee government spending. This would eliminate massive amounts of wastage, and political pork barrelling would be eliminated.
Fair enough. And in the last few years, we've been seeing in the political climate that there have been excessive spending, and entrepreneurs like Gina Reinhardt have brought it up, and now they've promised a budget surplus. They couldn't reach that budget surplus. So do you think those problems that we are economically facing right now would be solved by an independent sovereign?
Maybe not all of them, but you have an independent bank, not an independent board that's looking after the government spending. They would be people that appointed to that role, and they suitably qualified. You don't put. I mean, imagine you had a public company. Would you hire a Julia Gillard or a Wayne Treasurer to oversee and manage the bank account of a large public company? No, they would not qualify. So why would we allow in unqualified people, and why would you allow union factions that are dictating to the country right now to get their hands on a $360 billion till of taxpayers' money and serve their own interests? Politicians can't be trusted with this sort of money, because they'll do it to bribe voters, and you'll see it at every time. Take the power out of the hands of politicians, put it in the independent board that are qualified people that will carefully manage the money of taxpayers. That's what I'm saying is critical. There's a few other points I'd add as well, the removal of state governments as well. I've raised this before. I raised it some time ago in my book. Now, in the last 3 or 4 months, you've seen it's become quite topical. A lot of people now are agreeing or disagreeing with it. The idea of this is to really, whether we have to eliminate state governments and whether that'll happen is a different story. My point is, in a country of only 23 million people, the UK has 60 million people, has only 2 levels of government. My point is that there's a lot of wastage. Why isn't healthcare? Why isn't education? Why isn't transport? Why isn't infrastructure one national federal framework? Why is it duplicated and replicated state by state? That's my issue. So I'm saying those things should be stopped replication. Whether we have to fully get rid of the governments, state governments, that's debatable, but we certainly need to get rid of the duplication, and that would save billions per month.
So then how do the states represent themselves if they have specific needs?
Well, I'm suggesting if you are going to eliminate state governments, you would still keep the states, as far as
yes, of course.
You still have your states, so you don't have to worry about if you're a Queensland versus New South Wales state of origin fan.
Oh,
you're still going to be able to have that, or if you love AFL in Victoria, etc. So you still have your states.
Yes.
You would perhaps have state-appointed ministers to still oversee the interests of the states. My point is, the whole concept is get rid of the replication and duplication. One framework for education, health, transport, infrastructure, those things, so you're not having replication and multiple layers of bureaucracy. You eliminate all that, you save a fortune, that frees up money so you have better quality services. A lot of people think elimination of a state government reduce services. No, it's going to increase services because all this money is freed up to actually go into services, not into bureaucracy.
Fair enough. And do you have any other points about improving Australia?
I certainly have, but as far as the new political system, there's one other thing that I would add, and I'm bringing out Arnold Schwarzenegger, some people be aware, to Australia. He hasn't been here for since 1980 when he won Mr. Universe at the Opera House. Now, many people know he was the governor up until recently of California. What I like about what they have in California, remember, California is a bigger economy. It's the 8th largest economy in the world. It's a bigger economy than Australia. It has more population than Australia. They also, by the way, have where you can voters can actually submit their own policy. They get enough support for it, then it gets voted on, which is similar to my idea of voters voting on major policy. But the other thing they have, which I think is worthy of looking into for Australia, is they have the ability to recall the governor. Arnold Schwarzenegger, remember, was actually elected to power based on a recall of Governor Davis. Where if, something like in California, if people can just sit a submission to say, we want to recall the governor. Davis had just been re-elected, but people were so unhappy that he got into power. They did not, he was very unpopular. So if you get 600,000 signatures, you can get a recall, which is a recall of the elected governor. I'm suggesting if we had this in Australia right now, if it was, we were able to recall our Prime Minister. Remember, a Prime Minister right now that was never elected to power, that was put in power undemocratically. How many Australians, will we get 600,000 Australians right now? We're happy to sign a petition to do a recall on our Prime Minister, so we don't have to wait to September for more damage to our country to be done, that we can recall her. So in other words, you get 600,000, it goes to a vote by the public. Do you want to keep the current Prime Minister, yes or no? And what happened in California, if they say no, there's a list of nominations, and it was as little as $3,000 nomination fee. There's 100 different nominations for governor of California at the time, and Arnold Schwarzenegger being the most famous, become elected. And he become governor and are able to get rid of a governor that the state was very unhappy with, and the rest is history. I'm suggesting something like that in Australia would put a lot more power back in the hands of voters, and where enough voters are so unhappy with the current Prime Minister or political party that's in power that we can do a recall. That would put the power back in the hands of the voters. And I can tell you right now, without being political, if this was we could do a recall in this country, there would be 600,000 people out there that would sign a petition for a recall of our current Prime Minister within 24 hours. There would probably be 6 or 8 million that would do it within a matter of weeks. So if we had that power, we could recall now. We could have recalled a year or two ago and put the power of this country back into the majority of what voters want. It's all about what the majority want. That's what a democratic system should be. A 21st century modern day political system would be about putting the power in the hands of Australians, taking the power away from these small minority factions that are dictating to us Australians, us voters, who should be running this country.
That's great, Jamie. It seems as if your ideas would infuse a true democracy in Australia, something which a lot of people would debate is very much needed in this current political climate. So thank you very much for coming over, Jamie.
This June, Arnold Schwarzenegger is back in Australia. Proudly brought to you by Jamie Mcintyre and 21st Century Education. Don't miss out on your chance in seeing The Terminator live. Book now, Perth, Sydney and Melbourne.